They called me the ugly high school graduate, and my family disowned me. 10 years later, I found them at my sister's wedding. Her husband asked, "Do you know her?" I replied, "More than you think." I'll never forget the expression on their faces when they saw me enter my younger sister Sarah's wedding reception hall. It had been 10 years since they kicked me out of the house. 10 years since my own family decided I didn't deserve to be part of them because I didn't fit their standards of beauty and success. The invitation had arrived at my office 3 weeks ago. An elegant envelope with gold letters announcing the union of Sarah Martinez and Michael Fuentes, son of the city's most important real estate magnate. I stared at that fine paper between my fingers, feeling how the past hit me like a cold wave. After so much time of silence, why now? Why invite me to celebrate family happiness when they themselves destroyed mine? Throughout my adolescence, I was the ugly one in the family. While Sarah was the princess with golden hair and perfect smile, I was the girl with braces, thick glasses, and severe acne. "Lucy, you should try harder with your appearance," my mother constantly repeated, as if my physical appearance were a personal decision and not the result of genes and teenage hormones. My father, a successful businessman obsessed with appearances, barely spoke to me at family dinners. Everything changed that night of my graduation, when I accidentally overheard my father talking on the phone with a business partner. Yes, my daughter Sarah is the family jewel. Unfortunately, the older one is, well, let's say she didn't inherit the good genes. An ugly graduate doesn't reflect well on our family business image. Those words stuck in my heart like poisoned daggers. The humiliation I felt that night was unbearable, but the worst was yet to come. The next day, with tears in my eyes, I confronted my parents. I told them I had heard them, that I knew what they thought of me. Instead of apologizing, my father became furious. "Now you spy on us? What did you expect to hear?" "It's the truth, Lucy. Sarah has always been the public face of this family. You simply don't fit into our plans." My mother, always in his shadow, nodded silently. That same night, I packed my bags and left. There were no calls asking me to return, no apologies, just silence. A month later, I learned from a distant cousin that they had modified the family will to exclude me. The toxic family that had raised me decided I no longer existed. The years passed and revenge became my fuel. Not destructive revenge, but constructive revenge. I moved to another city. I worked multiple jobs while studying business administration. The acne disappeared. I changed my glasses for contact lenses, and my body transformed with exercise and determination. But the most important change was internal. I built my own financial consulting company that, ironically, ended up advising several competitors of the family business. Every step I took was a silent message to those who had rejected me. They didn't need me, but the world did. When I decided to attend the wedding, I didn't do it for reconciliation. I did it for justice. I wanted them to see who I had become despite them, not thanks to them. I put on a red dress that highlighted every curve of my transformed body, discreet but elegant jewelry, and makeup that enhanced the features they once despised. Upon entering the luxurious hotel where the ceremony was being held, I felt all eyes on me. No one recognized me, but everyone wondered who was that woman walking with such confidence. The ceremony was perfect, like everything my family organized. Sarah looked radiant in her designer wedding dress, while Michael, her now husband, looked at her with adoration. From my seat in one of the back rows, I observed my parents, now with gray hair, but with the same expression of superiority I remembered. The reception began, and I decided it was time to make my official entrance into the life they had denied me. I approached the main table, where Sarah and Michael were receiving congratulations. When my turn came, my sister's eyes opened wide. "Lucy?" she whispered with disbelief. Michael, confused, looked at his new wife and then at me. "Do you know her?" he asked. I smiled, feeling the weight of 10 years of silence dissolve in that moment. "More than you think," I replied calmly. "I'm her older sister." "Sister?" Michael stammered, looking alternately at Sarah and me. "You never mentioned you had a sister." The color left Sarah's face, while her eyes silently begged me not to cause a scene. Behind her, I saw how my parents approached with expressions that mixed surprise and horror. "Lucy," my father was the first to speak, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What an unexpected surprise. We didn't know if you would come." His voice maintained that controlled tone he used in business meetings when something didn't go according to plan. The toxic family that had rejected me now tried to maintain appearances in front of their new millionaire son-in-law. "I couldn't miss my only sister's wedding, right?" I replied with a polite smile. After all, family is the most important thing. Isn't that what you always said, Dad? I saw how a muscle tensed in his jaw. My mother approached and hugged me mechanically, as if she were performing in a theater play. You look different, she commented, examining me from top to bottom. I felt her surprise noticing my transformation. I was no longer the insecure teenager with skin problems and braces. Before her stood a confident woman, successful and, yes, also beautiful. 10 years can change a person, I replied, maintaining my composure, especially when they have to rebuild their life from scratch. The hint didn't go unnoticed by any of those present. Michael, visibly confused, tried to break the tension. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lucy. Sarah never... Well, I didn't know I had a sister-in-law. He extended his hand and I shook it firmly. There are many things about the Martinez family that you still don't know, Michael, I said with an enigmatic smile. The discomfort was palpable. Sarah, always the perfect princess, tried to take control of the situation. Lucy decided to follow her own path years ago, she quickly explained to her husband. We had differences of opinion, I repeated with disbelief. What an elegant way to say they disowned me for not meeting their aesthetic standards. The humiliation I suffered in this family has a more precise name than differences of opinion, Sarah. A tense silence fell over our small circle. Nearby guests began to notice that something wasn't right. My father, always concerned about appearances, intervened. This is not the time or place, Lucy, he said in a low but firm voice. It's your sister's special day. Of course, I conceded. I wouldn't want to ruin another family celebration. I had enough with my own graduation. Remember? When you called me the ugly graduate who didn't reflect well on the company's image, my father paled. He never imagined I had heard those exact words. Michael looked at my father with evident surprise. I don't know what you're talking about, my father tried to deny. I think you know perfectly well, I replied, without altering my calm tone. But as you said, this is Sarah's day. Let's enjoy the party. I walked away elegantly, leaving them stunned. I could feel their gazes fixed on my back as I headed toward the bar. The revenge was just beginning, and it would be served cold and calculated. At the bar, a man in a dark suit with an intelligent look approached. Impressive entrance, he commented, offering me a glass of champagne. Gabriel Vega, he introduced himself. Michael's partner at the real estate firm. Lucy Martinez, I replied, accepting the glass. Martinez? Are you related to the bride and groom? He asked with genuine interest. Sarah's older sister, the one nobody mentions, I explained with an ironic smile. Gabriel observed me with curiosity. I worked with your father on some projects years ago, he commented. An interesting man. A diplomatic way to describe him, I replied, laughing softly. Diplomacy is my specialty, Gabriel smiled, though I sense you prefer direct honesty. Honesty cost me my place in this family, so yes, I value it quite a bit. Our conversation was interrupted by the master of ceremonies announcing the newlyweds' first dance. Everyone gathered around the dance floor while Sarah and Michael danced to a romantic ballad. I watched my sister, as perfect as always, the center of attention, the undisputed favorite. It seems there's an interesting story behind your absence in family photos, Gabriel commented, following my gaze. A story of toxic family and impossible expectations, I replied frankly. I'd love to hear it someday, Gabriel said. There was something in his look that told me it wasn't simple curiosity. Why the interest? I asked directly. Gabriel hesitated a moment before responding. Let's say your father and I didn't end our business on good terms, and I suspect you might have valuable information. So I wasn't the only one with pending accounts with Edward Martinez. Interesting. The party continued, and I noticed how my parents tried to keep me away from the most important guests, especially Michael's family. It was evident they feared what I might reveal. Sarah, for her part, cast nervous glances at me every time I got too close to any group where she was talking. During dinner, they assigned me a distant table with distant cousins and peripheral friends. Justice seemed still far away, but I had my own plans. When it came time for speeches, I saw my father stand up with his glass raised, ready to give the traditional father of the bride speech. Dear friends and family, he began with his voice trained to impress. Today is one of the happiest days of my life, seeing my daughter Sarah, my greatest pride, unite in marriage with Michael. While he continued his speech full of cliches about family love and paternal pride, I felt anger growing inside me. How could the man who had expelled me from his life for not being attractive enough for his standards talk about family love? When he finished amid applause, the master of ceremonies announced, "And now, some words from friends and family who wish to share their good wishes with the newlyweds." Without thinking twice, I stood up and headed toward the microphone. I saw instant panic in my parents' eyes and the expression of horror on Sarah's face. They didn't know what I was going to say, and that fear was exactly what I sought to provoke. I took the microphone and smiled at the audience. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucy Martinez, Sarah's older sister. A murmur of surprise ran through the room. Many of the guests didn't even know Sarah had a sister. For those wondering why you've never seen me at family gatherings, I continued. Let's say I've been building my own path away from here. I saw my father make a gesture to stand up, but my mother stopped him, probably fearing that an interruption would cause more scandal. Sarah, I addressed my sister directly. You were always the family star, the perfect child. Today, seeing you so radiant, I understand why. I made a dramatic pause while everyone held their breath, waiting for some scandalous revelation. I wish you all the happiness in the world. And to you, Michael. I turned toward my new brother-in-law. I wish you wisdom to truly know the family you just entered. I left the microphone and returned to my table amid polite applause and confused looks. I hadn't said anything explicitly offensive, but the subtext was clear to those who needed to understand it. Moments later, while waiters served dessert, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Michael. Can we talk for a moment? He asked seriously. I followed him to a quiet corner of the room. Your speech was interesting, he commented. I was quite discreet considering the circumstances, I replied. What circumstances exactly? Michael asked, and I could see genuine curiosity in his eyes. Sarah has barely mentioned your existence, and when she did, she said you had voluntarily distanced yourself due to personal differences. I weighed my options. Could I tell Michael the whole truth and possibly ruin my sister's wedding night? Or could I be strategic? Families are complicated, Michael, I finally replied. Let's say the standards of success and beauty in the Martinez family are extremely rigorous. I didn't meet them, so they showed me the door. Are you telling me they kicked you out of home? He asked incredulously. I'm telling you that you should know well the family you just married into, I replied. Especially if you plan to have children someday. Michael's expression changed. It was evident that my words had planted a seed of doubt. There's something else I should know, isn't there? He insisted. At that moment, I saw Sarah approaching with an alarmed expression. The revenge was served, but the main course was still missing. Michael, honey, they're looking for you for photos with your parents. Sarah interrupted with a honeyed voice, but a threatening look directed at me. Of course, I'm coming right away, he replied, visibly uncomfortable. Lucy, I'd like to continue this conversation later. Whenever you want, I replied with a serene smile. As soon as Michael walked away, Sarah dropped her facade. What do you think you're doing? She hissed. You come to my wedding after 10 years to ruin everything? Ruin it? I'm just having a civilized conversation with my new brother-in-law, I replied without losing my composure. Unlike you, I don't hide the truth about our toxic family. Truth? You want to talk about truth? Sarah lowered her voice, but her tone was sharp. The truth is you were always jealous of me. You always wanted what I had. Her accusation made me laugh bitterly. Jealous? Sarah, I didn't want your beauty or your popularity. I just wanted a family that would accept me as I was. But I guess that was asking too much. You left. She reminded me with disdain. Nobody kicked you out. Really? Rewriting history to fit your perfect narrative? Typical of the Martinez family. I kept my voice controlled despite feeling fury bubbling inside me. Have you told Michael how they modified the will a month after my departure? Or how Dad made sure none of his contacts would hire me in the city? Sarah paled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you know. You were there when Dad called his partners to ruin my career before it could begin. The humiliation they planned for me was meticulous and complete. My sister looked away, confirming with her silence that my words were true. You know what, Sarah? For years I thought I hated you. That I hated this whole family for what they did to me. But now I realize I owe them gratitude. My statement surprised her. If they hadn't expelled me, I would never have discovered my own strength. I would never have built my company from scratch. I would never have experienced the true justice of succeeding on my own merits. Company? Sarah asked, and I noticed a flash of something in her eyes. Curiosity? Envy? Financial consulting, I replied. We advise several companies that compete with Dad. In fact, last year we were instrumental in the acquisition that almost destroyed his Monteverde project. Sarah's eyes opened with recognition. That failed project had been a devastating blow to my father, and now she knew I had been behind it. That was your revenge, she murmured. That was business, I corrected. Revenge is just beginning tonight. Before Sarah could respond, Gabriel approached us. Sorry to interrupt the family reunion, he said with a smile that suggested he wasn't sorry at all. Lucy, would you grant me this dance? I accepted his hand, leaving Sarah speechless and with an expression of bewilderment on her perfect face. On the dance floor, Gabriel guided me expertly. It seems your family reunion is being intense, he commented. 10 years of silence and lies aren't resolved with a simple cordial conversation, I replied. Your father seems especially disturbed by your presence, Gabriel observed. He hasn't stopped watching us since we started dancing. I turned slightly to confirm his words. Indeed, my father was watching us with a mixture of anger and concern. What conflict do you have exactly with my father? I asked Gabriel directly. He smiled enigmatically. Let's say Edward Martinez has a particular way of doing business, one that involves appropriating others' ideas and discarding those who are no longer useful to him. His words resonated with my own experience. It seems you know my father well. I was his protege for 3 years, Gabriel revealed, until I developed a real estate investment system that he presented as his own to the board of directors. When I confronted him, he fired me alleging irreconcilable differences. Edward Martinez's specialty, getting rid of those who don't fit his plans, I commented bitterly. While we danced, I noticed Michael watching us with interest from across the room. When the music ended, Gabriel escorted me back to my table. But before arriving, Michael intercepted our path. Lucy, I'd like to introduce you to my parents, he said with a formality that seemed rehearsed. This unexpected invitation clearly wasn't part of my parents' plan. I saw my mother whisper something alarmed in my father's ear, who quickly excused himself from his interlocutors and began heading toward us. It will be a pleasure, I replied to Michael, deliberately ignoring my father's approach. Michael guided me toward a table where an elegant couple was conversing with other guests. Mom, Dad, he called their attention. I want to introduce you to Lucy Martinez, Sarah's older sister. Frank Fuentes, the family patriarch and known real estate magnate, studied me with interest while shaking my hand. I didn't know Sarah had a sister, he commented bluntly. That seems to be the general consensus tonight, I replied with a smile. Lucy has been absent from family events for a while, my father intervened, having just reached us. His falsely cordial tone barely concealed his nervousness. 10 years to be exact, I specified, since I decided to follow my own business path. Business? Frank asked with genuine interest. What do you do, Lucy? Before I could answer, my father tried to divert the conversation. Lucy was always the rebel of the family. She preferred to abandon the family business to do other things. I'm founder and CEO of Altus Consultants, I replied directly to Frank, ignoring my father's interruption. Specialists in financial restructuring and strategic acquisitions. Recognition was immediate in Frank Fuentes' eyes. Altus? The same firm that advised the Torres-Mendoza merger last year? The same, I confirmed with pride. Frank looked at me with renewed respect. Impressive work. That merger revolutionized the southern real estate market. Thank you, I replied, secretly enjoying the expression of surprise and consternation on my father's face. We always seek to exceed expectations. My father tried to regain control of the situation. Lucy was always very ambitious, he said with a forced laugh, although I never imagined she would go so far without family support. Sometimes, Edward, Frank replied, looking at him directly. The best talents flourish precisely when they're allowed to fly on their own. He turned toward me. I'd love to discuss possible collaborations. Lucy, my company is considering an expansion that could benefit from your experience. It will be a pleasure, I replied, handing him my business card under my father's astonished gaze. The conversation continued, and with each word it became clear that Frank Fuentes, my sister's father-in-law and one of the country's most respected businessmen, was impressed with my achievements. The humiliation I once suffered was beginning to transform into sweet justice in front of those who had looked down on me. When we separated, Michael took me aside. I don't understand, he said confused. If you're so successful and respected, why does your family act as if you were some kind of embarrassing secret? It was the moment of truth. Revenge could be complete at this instant if I revealed all the cruelty of the Martinez family to their new member. Michael, I began. The answer to that question could forever change the way you see your new family. Are you sure you want to know it on your wedding night? He hesitated a moment, but his curiosity won out. I need to understand what I've gotten myself into, he finally replied. I took a deep breath. I was disinherited and expelled from the family for a reason that will seem absurd to you. I wasn't attractive enough according to my father's standards. What? The disbelief on his face was evident. My father built his empire based on perfect appearances. Sarah, with her natural beauty, was always his best presentation card in society. I, with my acne problems, braces, and ungraceful figure in adolescence, was an embarrassment to him. Michael seemed genuinely horrified. That's inhumane. The night of my graduation, I heard my father call me the ugly graduate, who didn't reflect well on the family business image. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He told me directly that I didn't fit into his plans. A month later, I found out they had modified the will to exclude me completely. I saw Michael process this information, connecting dots, finally understanding why Sarah had never mentioned having a sister. Sarah, was she okay with this? He finally asked. Sarah has always been the perfect daughter who follows Dad's orders, I replied sadly. She never defended me, never looked for me afterward. For them, it was easier to pretend I never existed. Michael ran his hand through his hair, visibly disturbed. I can't believe I got married without knowing something so fundamental about my wife and her family. At that moment, I had a revelation. My revenge didn't consist of ruining Sarah's life or publicly exposing my parents. True justice was in reclaiming my story, my truth, and allowing natural consequences to follow their course. I didn't come here to destroy your marriage, Michael, I told him sincerely. I came to reclaim my place, to show them they couldn't destroy me. What you do with this information is your decision. Our conversation was interrupted by the announcement of the bouquet toss. All single women congregated in the center of the dance floor, while Sarah, radiant in her wedding dress, prepared for the traditional toss. From my position, I saw my mother whisper something in Sarah's ear, while looking in my direction. Sarah nodded subtly, and then I understood. They would attempt one last public humiliation. All single women to the dance floor, announced the master of ceremonies enthusiastically. A group of young women gathered expectantly while Sarah climbed onto a small platform decorated with flowers. Gabriel approached me with a glass of champagne. Not joining the ritual of female desperation? He asked with humor. I think I'll pass, I replied, watching the scene. I have a suspicion that Bouquet is programmed to avoid me at all costs. Sarah, from her elevated position, scanned the participants with her gaze. When her eyes briefly rested on me, I saw that smile I knew so well, the same one she wore when she was about to get something I wanted. My mother, at one side of the dance floor, nodded discreetly. Family traditions are fascinating, Gabriel commented, following my gaze, especially when they're loaded with hidden meanings. In the Martinez family, nothing is casual, I confirmed. Every gesture, every word, every exclusion has a purpose. Sarah turned around, preparing to throw the bouquet. The group of single women got excited, stretching their hands upward. With a theatrical movement, my sister threw the bouquet directly toward a young woman who, I deduced from her resemblance to Michael, must be his cousin. One more symbolic act of exclusion, so subtle that no one except me could interpret it correctly. The message was clear. Even in the most trivial traditions, I remained the excluded one, the one who didn't deserve even the possibility of catching a bridal bouquet. Predictable, I murmured to myself. Gabriel was watching me attentively. Does it bother you? He asked. No, I replied honestly. It confirms I made the right decision building my life away from them. The party continued, and I noticed Michael seemed distant with Sarah, evidently affected by our conversation. My parents, perceiving something wasn't right, intensified their efforts to keep the couple separated from me, organizing photos, introductions, and small activities that kept them busy. During the final toast, my father took the microphone again. His face showed the accumulated tension of the night, but his voice maintained that confident and dominant tone that characterized him. Dear friends, family, distinguished guests, he began solemnly. Before concluding this wonderful celebration, I want to thank everyone for accompanying us on this day so special for our family. He made a strategic pause. As a father, there is no greater pride than seeing a daughter fulfill herself and find happiness. Sarah has always been the epitome of the values we Martinez represent: beauty, elegance, intelligence, and dedication. Each word was a dart directed toward me. The subliminal message was clear. Sarah was everything I wasn't, everything I couldn't be to deserve the Martinez surname. Today, by uniting with Michael, we're not only celebrating the love between two exceptional people, but also the union of two families that share the same values and aspirations. He raised his glass. To Sarah and Michael, and to the bright future that awaits them. Everyone applauded and drank. When silence returned, the unexpected happened. Frank Fuentes, Michael's father, stood up with his glass in hand. I'd like to add some words, he said with authority. He was an imposing man whose presence commanded immediate respect. Tonight has been revealing in many ways, he continued, looking directly at my father. I've learned that appearances can be deceiving, and that sometimes a family's true talents can remain hidden or be deliberately concealed. A murmur ran through the room. My father visibly tensed. I'm pleased to announce, Frank continued, that in addition to celebrating our children's union, today I mark the beginning of a professional collaboration with a brilliant businesswoman who, curiously, I just discovered is a member of the Martinez family. He turned toward me. Lucy, your strategic vision and achievements at Altus Consultants are exactly what Fuentes Corporation needs for our next expansion phase. The silence that followed was absolute. All eyes turned toward me, including those of my parents, who showed a mixture of horror and disbelief. It will be an honor to collaborate with you, Mr. Frank, I replied with a clear and firm voice. The honor is mine, he replied. Sometimes the most valuable gems are those some don't know how to appreciate. This last phrase he directed straight at my father, who seemed to have lost all the blood from his face. The humiliation I had suffered for years was now transforming into public justice. The patriarch of the Fuentes, one of the country's most respected businessmen, had just validated my professional worth, in front of the same family that had rejected me for not meeting their superficial standards. When the reception began to disperse, my mother approached me with a tense smile. Lucy, dear, what a wonderful surprise you've given us tonight, she said with falseness. Your father and I always knew you had potential. Please, Mom, I replied calmly. Spare me the hypocrisy. We both know my potential only became visible when a man like Frank Fuentes recognized it publicly. That's not fair, she protested. We always loved you, but you chose to distance yourself. Not fair? I repeated with disbelief. You want to talk about fairness? How about the fact that you modified the will to completely disinherit me? Or how Dad made sure no local company would hire me? My mother lowered her gaze, unable to bear the weight of the truth. Your father only wanted what was best for the family business, she murmured. The best for his ego, you mean, I corrected. But you know what? I thank him for it. If they hadn't rejected me so completely, I would never have discovered my own strength. At that moment, my father joined us. His usual confidence had disappeared, replaced by a mixture of calculation and concern. Lucy, he began with what was intended to be a conciliatory tone, it seems you've been quite successful on your own. I'm impressed. No, Dad, I corrected him. You're alarmed. You're worried that my association with Frank Fuentes might affect your company. You're worried that all those dirty secrets you've accumulated over the years will come to light. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied tensely. Don't you? What about how you appropriated Gabriel Vega's investment system? Or how you manipulated the Monteverde contracts to maximize your profits at the expense of small investors? My father paled. How do I know? I finished his question. For 10 years, I've followed every step of Martinez investments, every project, every acquisition, every dubious maneuver. Do you think my participation in the operation that almost ruined your Monteverde project was coincidence? My father looked at me with a mixture of anger and new respect. For the first time, he wasn't seeing the disappointing daughter he had disinherited, but a formidable business opponent. What is it you want? He finally asked, adopting the tone he used for difficult negotiations. Now? Nothing, I replied honestly. 10 years ago, I just wanted a family that would value me for who I was, not for how I looked. Now, I just wanted you to see what I became despite you, not thanks to you. My mother, who had remained silent, tried to soften the tension. Lucy, darling, maybe we could meet soon. Talk about all this calmly. Family is important. Family, I replied, looking at her directly, is who accepts and loves you unconditionally. You were never that for me. You had very specific conditions for your love, conditions I didn't meet. At that moment, Sarah approached, visibly disturbed. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide that she had been crying. What did you tell Michael? She demanded. He's been acting strange all night, barely talks to me. I told him the truth, Sarah. Something you never dared to do. The truth, she repeated with bitterness. Your version of the truth, you mean? You always victimized yourself. Always wanted everyone to feel sorry for you. Her words would have hurt me years ago, but now they only confirmed how far apart we were as a family. Sarah, I said calmly, your husband deserves to know what kind of family has received him. If your relationship is as perfect as you pretend, it will survive the truth. Michael approached our small group, his expression serious. He positioned himself next to me, not next to Sarah, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by anyone. Sarah, he said with controlled voice, I think we need to talk seriously when we return from the honeymoon. Michael, you can't believe whatever she told you, Sarah protested. You barely know her. She's been absent 10 years. And you never told me why, he replied. You never mentioned having a sister until she appeared tonight? Do you know what that tells me about you? About us? The revenge was taking a path I hadn't anticipated myself. I didn't want to destroy Sarah's marriage, just show everyone that they hadn't managed to destroy me. Michael, I intervened. I didn't come to ruin your marriage. Sarah is complicated, like all the Martinez, but that doesn't mean she can't be a good wife. My unexpected defense surprised everyone, especially Sarah, who looked at me confused. What my family did to me was cruel, I continued, but each person must take responsibility for their own actions. My father and mother made active decisions to exclude me. Sarah simply went with the flow, as she's done all her life. My father, always attentive to saving appearances, quickly intervened. I think this is not the time or place for family discussions. The guests are watching. Always worried about appearances, I commented. Some things never change. Frank Fuentes, who had been observing the scene from a distance, approached. Michael, Sarah, he said with authority. Your transportation is ready to take you to the hotel. Your flight to Paris leaves early tomorrow. Sarah, relieved by the interruption, took Michael's arm. Come on, honey, it's been a long day. Michael hesitated a moment, then looked at me. Lucy, I'd like to keep in touch. There are things I need to understand better. Of course, I replied, handing him my card. I'm a phone call away. As the couple walked away, I could see the tension in their postures. My revelation had planted a seed of doubt that could fundamentally change their relationship, for better or worse. Frank stayed behind a moment. Interesting family yours, Miss Martinez, he commented. You have no idea, I replied. On the contrary, he smiled enigmatically. I have a quite clear idea. That's why I'm even more interested in our professional collaboration. He lowered his voice. Edward Martinez has been a difficult competitor for years. Sometimes justice requires unexpected allies. His words confirmed my suspicions. Frank Fuentes wasn't only impressed by my professional achievements, but also saw in me an ally against my father. Revenge had acquired a new dimension. Justice can take many forms, I replied cautiously. Precisely. He nodded. My office will call you Monday to finalize the details of our collaboration. As guests were leaving, Gabriel approached again. Ready to go? He asked. Almost, I replied. There's one last thing I must do. I headed toward where my parents were talking with the last guests. I waited patiently until they were alone, and then I approached. I'm leaving now, I announced simply. Lucy, my father began, adopting a reconciliatory tone I had never heard from him. Maybe we were hasty years ago. Obviously, you've proven your worth. My worth, I repeated slowly. Interesting choice of words. Dad. Now I have worth because Frank Fuentes wants to do business with me? Because I represent a potential threat to your company? Don't be so harsh, my mother intervened. Your father is trying to build a bridge built on self-interest. Not on genuine repentance, I replied. But it's okay. I didn't come looking for apologies or reconciliations. Then why did you come? My father finally asked. I looked him directly in the eyes. Those eyes that had so many times looked at me with disappointment. I came to close a chapter. To show you that the ugly graduate you despised became a stronger and more successful woman than you ever imagined. And so you would know that every time you see my name in business news, every time a competitor beats you to a contract with my advice, it's me reminding you of what you lost. A heavy silence fell between us. For the first time, I saw something I had never seen in my father's eyes. Regret. It was never my intention to hurt you, he finally said, his voice devoid of its usual confidence. Intentions matter less than actions, I replied. And your actions spoke very clearly. My mother, with tears in her eyes, tried to touch my arm. Lucy, please, you're our daughter. No, Mom. I stepped back slightly. I stopped being your daughter the day you allowed me to be expelled from this family without saying a word in my defense. Biologically, we share blood, but a family is much more than that. With those words, I turned to leave. My father, in an unexpected gesture, called me. Lucy, wait. When I turned, I saw something I had never seen in him. Vulnerability. Is there any possibility of repair? He asked, almost in a whisper. I considered his question carefully. The revenge I had imagined for years had materialized in ways I didn't expect. I didn't feel the bitter satisfaction I had anticipated, but a strange sensation of freedom. I don't know, Dad, I replied honestly. 10 years of silence and rejection aren't erased with one night of forced recognition. But if you really want to try, you'll have to do something you've never done. Value me for who I am, not for what I can contribute to you. With those words, I walked away, feeling the weight of a decade of pain begin to dissolve. Gabriel was waiting for me at the entrance. Everything okay? He asked, offering me his arm. Surprisingly, yes, I replied, accepting it. I think I've finally stopped being the ugly graduate to become simply Lucy. As I left the luxurious hotel, the fresh night air welcomed me like a promise. The revenge I had planned for so long had evolved into something much more powerful. True liberation. The morning after the wedding dawned with a clarity that seemed to reflect my mental state. While I drank coffee on the terrace of my hotel suite, reviewing emails on my laptop, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The revenge I had imagined had transformed into something deeper, a personal vindication that no one could take away from me. My phone vibrated with a message from Gabriel. Breakfast? I have information that might interest you about the Monteverde project. I smiled. Gabriel Vega had turned out to be much more than a circumstantial ally on that night of confrontations. His inside knowledge of my father's operations could be invaluable for my next business moves. We met at a small cafe away from the Martinez family's usual circuit. Gabriel was already there, elegant even in casual attire, reviewing documents while drinking espresso. Good morning, I greeted, sitting across from him. I hope the information is worth getting up early on a Sunday. Gabriel smiled, closing his briefcase. Oh, believe me, it's worth it. But first, how do you feel after last night? Not every day one confronts 10 years of family humiliation in a single evening. Surprisingly liberated, I admitted, as if I had dropped a weight I was carrying without realizing it. Justice has that effect. Gabriel nodded. Though I suspect your family is experiencing a very different sensation this morning. I wouldn't be surprised, I commented while the waiter served my coffee. My father must be frantically calculating how to neutralize the threat I now represent, especially with the Fuentes alliance on the horizon. Gabriel slid a folder toward me. About that, I've compiled all the documentation related to the Monteverde project irregularities. Your father didn't just manipulate contracts. There's evidence of bribes to municipal officials to expedite permits. I examined the documents with growing interest. It was explosive information, the kind of evidence that could not only damage Martinez Investments' reputation, but potentially result in legal action. How did you get this? I asked, genuinely impressed. Let's say I wasn't the only employee who left the company with a bitter taste, Gabriel replied. I maintain contacts with discontented people who have meticulously documented every transgression for years. While I analyzed the information, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated a moment before answering. Lucy Martinez? Asked a female voice I didn't recognize. Yes. Who's speaking? I'm Claudia, Frank Fuentes' assistant. Mr. Frank requests a meeting with you this afternoon, if possible. A situation has arisen that requires immediate attention. I looked at Gabriel, intrigued. Of course. Where and when? At his main office. At 3. I'll send you the address by message. After hanging up, I shared the information with Gabriel. It seems our weekend of revelations continues. Frank Fuentes isn't a man for Sunday meetings unless it's something extraordinarily important, Gabriel commented, or potentially lucrative. At 3 o'clock sharp, I found myself in the impressive Fuentes Corporation building, being escorted by Claudia to the main office. The place breathed power and success, very different from the ostentatious style my father preferred for his facilities. Frank Fuentes received me with professional courtesy. To my surprise, Michael was also there, with a serious expression and red eyes that suggested lack of sleep. Lucy, thank you for coming on such short notice, Frank began. The situation is delicate. Michael intervened. I canceled the honeymoon. His voice sounded hollow, devoid of the happiness that should characterize a newlywed. What? Why? I asked, genuinely surprised. My intention had never been to destroy their marriage, just reveal the truth about my family. After our conversation last night, I confronted Sarah, Michael explained. I wanted to give her the opportunity to explain herself, to tell me her version of what happened with you. But instead of that, she confirmed everything you had told me and more. Not only did they repudiate you for not meeting their aesthetic standards, but Sarah actively participated in your exclusion. Frank took the floor. Normally, I wouldn't get involved in personal matters, but this has taken a turn that potentially affects our business interests. How exactly? I asked, trying to understand why I was being included in what seemed like a private marital drama. Sarah revealed that your father has been using privileged information to manipulate certain acquisitions, Frank explained. Information that, apparently, Michael shared, trusting in his wife's discretion. Michael looked devastated. I was naive. I thought I was sharing business details with my future wife, not with an industrial spy for Edward Martinez. The revelation left me stunned. My sister had not only participated in my family expulsion, but now had betrayed her own husband's trust out of loyalty to our father. The toxic family at its maximum expression, I murmured, more to myself than to them. Precisely, Frank nodded. And now we have a problem. Sensitive information about our next corporate strategies is in your father's hands, potentially compromising millions in investments. And what does this have to do with me? I asked, though I already intuited the answer. We need your help, Frank replied directly. Your inside knowledge of how Edward Martinez operates, combined with your experience in financial restructuring, could be crucial to mitigate the damage. Besides, Michael added, you're the only person with family connections who has demonstrated integrity in this whole matter. The irony didn't escape me. The same family that had rejected me for considering me inadequate now faced the consequences of their own duplicity. And I, the exile, was now sought as savior. I understand the situation, I replied carefully. But I must ask, what happens with Sarah? She's my sister, despite everything. Michael looked toward the window, avoiding my gaze. She's at your parents' house. I asked her for time to reconsider our marriage. And the legal aspect of all this? I asked Frank. For now, we're evaluating options, he replied. But if we confirm there was deliberate use of privileged information, we'll proceed with legal actions. I felt a chill. The revenge I had imagined for years was materializing in ways I had never foreseen, with potentially devastating consequences for my entire biological family. I need time to think, I said finally. This goes beyond a simple professional collaboration. Frank nodded understandingly. Of course, but don't delay too much. In the business world, every hour counts when there are information leaks. I left the meeting with a turbulent mind. On one hand, the poetic justice was undeniable. The family that had humiliated me now faced their own public humiliation. On the other hand, did I really want to be an instrument of their total destruction? My phone rang again. This time it was a familiar number I hadn't seen in a decade. My mother, Lucy. Her voice sounded broken, almost unrecognizable. We need to talk. It's an emergency. The tone of genuine desperation surprised me. What's happening? I asked cautiously. Your father has had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. My world stopped momentarily. Despite everything, the news deeply impacted me. Is it serious? I asked, feeling a knot in my throat. The doctors say it's serious. He's stable, but... Lucy, he's been asking for you. The revelation left me speechless. The man who had expelled me from his life, who had erased my existence from family history, now sought me in his moment of vulnerability. I'll go, I replied simply, before hanging up. The private hospital where my father was interned was the same where, ironically, I had been born 32 years ago. As I walked through the aseptic hallways, I felt the weight of the decision I was about to make. Forgive? Get revenge? Or simply close the circle to be able to move forward? In the waiting room, I found Sarah, with smudged makeup and a desolate expression. When she saw me, she stood up hesitantly, as if she didn't know whether to approach or maintain distance. She came, she said simply, addressing my mother, who was sitting in a corner. My mother approached, aged 10 years in a single day. Thank you for coming, she whispered, taking my hands. It means a lot. I haven't come for you, I clarified honestly. I've come because, despite everything, he's my father. Sarah looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Michael told you everything, I suppose, she murmured. Yes, I replied simply, though I don't understand why. Sarah, why betray your own husband? Dad asked me to, she replied with barely audible voice. He said it was crucial for the company's future, that it was my duty as a daughter. And you've always fulfilled your duty, haven't you? I commented without malice, just stating a fact. Even when that duty meant excluding your own sister. Sarah began to cry silently. I'm sorry, Lucy, I really am sorry. I was cowardly. I was selfish. I never wanted... Miss Martinez, a doctor interrupted, approaching our group. Your father is conscious and has asked to see you. Only you. The hospital room was in penumbra, illuminated only by the dim light of the monitors that recorded my father's vital signs. Edward Martinez, the man who had always projected an image of unbreakable power, lay diminished between white sheets, connected to cables and tubes that maintained his fragile existence. "Lucy," he whispered upon seeing me enter. His voice, once powerful and authoritative, was now barely audible. "You came." "Yes." "Dad," I replied, sitting in the chair next to his bed. "I'm here." An uncomfortable silence settled between us. 10 years of absence, rejection, and pain don't dissipate easily, not even facing mortality. "The doctors say I'll recover," he finally commented. "But it's been a warning." I nodded, not knowing what to say. Part of me was still the hurt girl who desperately sought this man's approval. Another part was the empowered woman who had built her life despite his rejection. "Lucy," my father continued with difficulty, "what I did to you, what we did to you, was unforgivable." His words surprised me. In 32 years, I had never heard Edward Martinez admit an error, much less ask for forgiveness. "Why now, Dad?" I asked. "Is it because you're in a hospital bed or because I now represent a threat to your business?" My father closed his eyes momentarily, as if my words had caused him physical pain. "I deserve it," he admitted. "Your distrust, your resentment, I've earned it over the years." He took a deep breath before continuing. "Last night, after you left the wedding, I had an argument with Sarah. She told me about Michael, about the information she had gotten for me. And then, something in me broke. I saw what I had turned my family into, what I had become myself. His eyes, now moist, sought mine. The pain in my chest began then, Lucy. Literally, my heart was breaking for what I had done. I wanted to maintain my shield, my armor of indifference. But his words were beginning to find cracks in my defense. "All my life," my father continued, "I built an empire based on appearances. Beauty, prestige, the perfect image. It was all I valued. And in the process, I lost my eldest daughter. I lost the opportunity to know the extraordinary woman you became." A solitary tear rolled down his cheek. "When Frank Fuentes praised you last night, I didn't feel threat or concern. I felt pride, Lucy, a pride I had no right to feel. Because your achievements aren't thanks to me, but despite me." I remained silent, processing his words, searching in them for the sincerity I had longed for so many years. "I don't expect your forgiveness," he continued. "I just wanted you to know that I finally see clearly. I see the damage I caused. I see the injustice I committed. And I deeply regret it." I breathed deeply, trying to control the contradictory emotions that invaded me. "What about the information Sarah got from Michael?" I asked. "Did you plan to use it against Fuentes Corporation?" My father nodded weakly. "That was the plan. But after last night, after seeing the consequences of my actions, I told Sarah we wouldn't use it, that it was time to do business with integrity, not with manipulation." "And she believed you?" I asked skeptically. "No," he admitted with a sad smile. "Too many years seeing me play dirty, I suppose. That's why she leaked the information to Michael this morning, confessing everything. She wanted to protect her husband from me." This revelation surprised me. Sarah had finally chosen honesty, breaking the pattern of manipulation our father had established. "Sarah is devastated," I commented. "She fears losing Michael." "And with reason," my father replied. "I taught her to value success and appearances above integrity. Now she's paying the price for my lessons." A gentle knock on the door interrupted our conversation. It was a nurse. "Excuse me, but the patient needs to rest," she announced kindly. I stood up to leave, but my father took my hand weakly. "Lucy, before you go, I want you to know I've modified the will again. I've restored your part of the inheritance, as it always should have been, not because you need it now, but because it's just." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of manipulation, but only saw sincere regret. "It's not about money, Dad," I replied softly. "It never was about that." "I know," he nodded. "It's about recognition, about validation, about justice." I nodded silently and left the room with mixed emotions. In the waiting room, Sarah immediately stood up when she saw me. "How is he?" she asked anxiously. "Stable," I replied, and surprisingly lucid. My mother approached timidly. "Lucy, could we talk for a moment?" she asked with a hesitant voice. We stepped aside to a more private corner. My mother, who had always been my father's silent shadow, now seemed to have difficulty finding words. "I never defended you," she finally began, her voice breaking. "I never opposed your father when he expelled you from our lives. It's my greatest shame, my greatest failure as a mother." The sincerity in her words was palpable. "Why, Mom?" I asked, giving voice to the question that had tormented me for years. "Why did you allow it to happen?" "Fear," she replied simply. Fear of your father? Fear of being alone? Fear of losing the security he provided? She paused, drying her tears. But what I didn't understand until last night is that I had already lost something much more valuable. My integrity as a mother. My relationship with you. Her words opened a door I had kept closed for years, allowing a ray of understanding, if not total forgiveness, to enter my heart. I can't change the past, Lucy, she continued, but if you give me the opportunity, I'd like to try to be part of your future. Get to know you again as the extraordinary woman you are now. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with a message from Gabriel. Urgent news about Fuentes. Call me when you can. I need to make a call, I told my mother. We'll talk later. I stepped away to call Gabriel privately. What's happening? I asked as soon as he answered. Frank Fuentes just called an emergency meeting with his main executives, Gabriel informed. It seems that despite Sarah's confession, he's still going ahead with the plan to take legal action against your father. Are you sure? I asked, feeling new tension arise within me. Completely. My source inside the corporation is reliable. Frank sees this as a unique opportunity to permanently weaken Martinez's investments. The justice I had sought for so long now presented itself in the form of total destruction of my biological family. Was that what I really wanted? Thanks for the information, Gabriel, I replied. I need to think about what to do with this. I returned to my mother and Sarah, who looked at me expectantly. I have to go, I announced. There are urgent matters I must attend to. Will you come back? My mother asked with barely disguised hope. I hesitated a moment before responding. Yes, I'll come back, I promised, surprising myself with my decision. 3 hours later, I found myself in Frank Fuentes' office. The real estate magnate received me with evident surprise. Lucy, I wasn't expecting to see you today, he commented, indicating I should take a seat. How is your father? Stable, I replied, and lucid enough to make important decisions. Frank observed me with curiosity. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? I come to propose a deal, I replied directly. One that will benefit Fuentes Corporation without the need for legal actions against Martinez investments. I'm listening, Frank said, joining his hands on his desk. I propose a strategic merger between Altus Consultants and Martinez Investments Real Estate Development Division, I explained. With my company as intermediary, we could create a beneficial alliance for both corporations. Fuentes would gain access to Martinez's most promising projects without the legal risk of a hostile acquisition, and my father would maintain some control over his business legacy. Frank studied me carefully. An interesting proposal. But why should I consider it when I have the opportunity to eliminate a competitor? Because business revenge can be gratifying in the short term, but strategic alliances generate sustainable benefits, I replied. Besides, my knowledge of both companies guarantees a transition without the usual conflicts of a hostile acquisition. And your father has agreed to this? Frank asked skeptically. I haven't formally presented the proposal to him yet, but I know he'll consider it seriously, given the circumstances. Frank reflected for a few moments, drumming his fingers on the table. I've always admired innovation over destruction, he finally admitted. Prepare a detailed draft of this merger and we'll review it. But Lucy, he added seriously, if this is just a tactic to buy time, it's not, I assured him. It's a win-win solution, including for Michael. At the mention of his son, Frank nodded slowly. My son is devastated by Sarah's betrayal, he commented, but also confused. Despite everything, it seems he still feels something for her. Love is complicated, I replied. And people make mistakes. Sometimes they even deserve second chances. Upon leaving Fuentes Corporation, my next stop was the hospital. My father was awake, with better appearance than hours before. Lucy? He smiled weakly upon seeing me. You've returned. I told you I would, I replied, sitting next to his bed. And I come with a business proposal. I explained my merger plan in detail. As I spoke, I saw something change in his gaze. Professional respect mixed with personal regret. It's brilliant, he admitted when I finished. An elegant solution that saves the company without compromising the future. He paused, looking at me with new admiration. You were always the smartest in the family, Lucy. I regret having been too blind to see it. It's not just about intelligence, Dad, I replied. It's about integrity. About doing business with principles, not with manipulation. My father nodded slowly. A lesson I've learned late in life. He took my hand with surprising strength. I accept your proposal. Not just as salvation for the company, but as the first step to rebuild something much more important. Our family. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings, legal documents, and negotiations. Gabriel proved to be an invaluable ally, contributing his experience and contacts to structure the merger. Against all odds, the plan began to take shape, with both corporations seeing the potential of the strategic alliance. A week later, while I was finalizing details in my office, I received an unexpected visit. "Sorry for coming without notice," Sarah said timidly, standing at the threshold. "Your assistant let me pass." I invited her to sit, noticing her exhausted expression and the dark circles under her eyes. The always perfect Sarah finally seemed human in her vulnerability. "Michael and I are in couples therapy," she revealed after an uncomfortable silence. "He says he wants to try but needs time to trust again." "I'm glad," I replied sincerely. "You both deserve the opportunity to rebuild on more honest foundations." Sarah looked at me with tearful eyes. "I always envied you, you know, even when you were the ugly one in the family." Her confession surprised me. "Envied me? Why?" "For your freedom," she replied. "For your ability to be yourself without worrying about Dad's expectations. I always lived to please him, to maintain my position as the favorite. And in the process, I lost my own identity." Her words revealed a perspective of our family dynamic I had never considered. Sarah, the perfect one, the favorite, had been as much a prisoner of family expectations as I had. "It's never too late to find your own voice, Sarah," I told her softly. "That's what I'm trying now," she nodded. "And I wanted to thank you for the merger. Dad told me about your proposal. You're saving the family after how we treated you." "I'm not doing it just for the family," I clarified. "I'm doing it because it's the best business solution. And because, despite everything, I believe in second chances." Sarah stood up to leave but stopped at the door. "Do you think someday we can really be sisters, Lucy? Not just by blood, but by choice?" The question took me by surprise. For years I had considered Sarah as the antagonist of my story, the perfect princess who benefited from my exclusion. But now I saw her as a woman trying to free herself from the same toxic patterns I had faced. "I think we can try," I replied honestly. "One day at a time." 3 months later, the merger had been completed successfully. Altus Martinez Fuentes emerged as a real estate powerhouse, with innovative projects that combined the experience of the three entities. My father, now recovered from his heart attack, assumed a consultative role, accepting for the first time in his life a background position. The relationship with my family continued to be a work in progress. Uncomfortable lunches gradually transformed into genuine conversations. Old wounds began to heal, though scars would remain as reminders of what happened. One afternoon, I received a call from Michael. "Lucy," he began without preamble, "I wanted to personally thank you. The merger has been a resounding success, and my father can't stop praising your strategic vision." "I'm glad it's working for everyone," I replied. "It's not just professional," Michael continued. "It's personal, too. Sarah is changing. The therapy is helping. We're rebuilding on more honest foundations, as you said." "I'm happy for you both," I said sincerely. "In fact," Michael added with a lighter tone, "we're organizing a small dinner this Saturday. Nothing formal, just close family. Sarah insisted I invite you personally." "Close family?" I repeated, savoring the irony. 10 years ago, I had been excluded from that inner circle. Now I was specifically invited. "Will you come?" Michael asked. "It would mean a lot to everyone." I thought about the insecure young woman I had been, about the ugly graduate my father had rejected. I thought about the strong woman I had become, capable not only of achieving success on my own, but also of offering second chances. "Yes," I finally replied. "I'll be there." When I hung up, I looked through my office window toward the city's horizon. The revenge I had planned for so long had transformed into something much more powerful. The ability to rebuild on my own terms, without allowing the past to dictate my future. I was no longer the rejected daughter seeking approval. I was Lucy Martinez, a woman who had found her own path, her own voice, and finally, her own form of justice. On my desk rested Sarah's wedding invitation, now framed as a reminder of the day everything changed. Next to it, a recent photo. My father, my mother, Sarah, Michael, and me at the inauguration ceremony of our first joint project. We weren't the perfect family my father had tried to project so many years ago. We were imperfect, we were wounded, but we were healing. And perhaps, after all, that was true revenge. Not destruction, but transformation. Not just of my family, but of myself. There are stories that aren't just stories. They are mirrors of life. If this one moved you, help us continue telling others that also deserve to be heard. Thank you very much and have an excellent day.